biggest games, the best performances, expert analysis. You are Locked On Now.
Welcome in. You're listening to Locked On Now, local experts on the biggest stories throughout the NBA. I'm your host, Kainani Stevens. Thank you for making Locked On Now your first listen every weekday. On today's show, another busy day in the NBA means we have plenty of action and plenty of information from our Locked On NBA hosts who give you everything you need to know from last night in the league. Let's start with Thursday's best performance.
The best performance.
Hold up.
We head to Philly for that. The big man, Joel Embiid, dropped 30 points, pulled down 18 boards. The Sixers avoided that team drama en route to a win. But the Pistons, much like the Detroit Lions, they have yet to get a victory this season. Locked On Pistons has more on a promising late-game comeback that fell short and high hopes for the future.
What's the deal? Host of the Locked On Pistons podcast, Cooper Hill here. The Pistons get another loss. They moved to 0-4 in the season. They lose to the 76ers, 110-102, but they made an incredible comeback. Once down by 22 earlier in the fourth quarter, Dwayne Casey made a move to bring back Killian Hayes for his first minutes of the fourth quarter, and Jeremy Grant and Saddiq Bey. Killian Hayes and Saddiq Bey had fantastic fourth quarters, leading a Pistons comeback that once saw the lead cut down to 6 at a certain point, and sadly, a wiped out layup by Killian Hayes due to a Kelly Olynyk questionable as hell offensive foul call took all that momentum away at the end, and Joel Embiid was able to close the Pistons out with a dagger 3 on the other end after that play. But it was an encouraging game from the Pistons down the stretch. They saw improvements in this game from Killian Hayes. You saw Saddiq Bey start to get his offensive stroke back from beyond the arc. But at the end of the day, 70% from the free throw line on 19 of 27 shooting and 33% from beyond the arc just isn't going to cut it. The Pistons have to get this offense together, has to start hitting some shots. We'll talk about this game furthermore on tomorrow's episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast.
The Hawks and Wizards faced off on Thursday. Trae Young cooled off after a pair of 30-point games. He had just 15 points on 17 shots, and other good performances were not enough for Atlanta to get a win over surging Washington. For the whole story on the loss for ATL, Locked On Hawks.
Hello friends, my name is Brad Rowland, and the Atlanta Hawks go down in Washington by a final score of 122-111 on this Thursday evening, falling to 3-2 on the young season. And offensively, it was not awful from the Hawks in this game. You had Trae Young having big numbers, you had John Collins playing fantastic basketball, Cam Reddish with a strong night off the bench, but defensively, it was a mess for the Hawks in this game. Even with a lowly fourth quarter effort from the Wizards, the Hawks still allowed 122 points, and honestly, it felt worse than that at times. The transition stuff was bad, the rim protection was bad, point of attack defense was bad. It was not the best effort from the Hawks defensively in this game. Credit to Washington for taking advantage of it in a big way, but the Hawks did not play well defensively, at least not well enough in this game, and as a result, they take what was probably closer than this final margin indicated, but still not the best effort from the Hawks in Washington on this evening. We'll talk about all of that and much, much more on the next episode of Locked On Hawks podcast, and we hope to see you then.
Luka Doncic led the Mavs to their third straight win. Locked On Mavs has more on how Dallas was able to take advantage of a reeling San Antonio Spurs squad, and they have more.
The Dallas Mavericks went down 23-3 to start the game against the San Antonio Spurs, but got the win. Nick Angstead, Isaac Harris from the Locked On Mavericks podcast. And the Mavericks would have been absolutely toast, sunk, bottom of the ocean, whatever you want to call it, without Jalen Brunson in this game. He had an absolutely masterful second quarter to the game and absolutely brought the Mavericks back from just the brink of devastation and all-out just panic.
Mavericks defense steps up, but like you said, it was Brunson off the bench, but it was a two-man punch off the bench. It was also Maxi Kleber. 12 points, 10 rebounds, and 6 blocks in this game. Like, huge game for Maxi and Brunson off the bench. They don't win the game without those two guys off the bench.
Only 17 players in NBA history have ever done that in a game. What Maxi Kleber just did. Incredible game for him. Nick Angstead, Isaac Harris, Locked On Mavs. We'll have all of it and the full breakdown on our YouTube channel.
The Spurs dropped their third straight as Popovich continues to try and figure out who his go-to guys are going to be this season. Locked On Spurs has details on this young roster and how they continue to figure things out.
This is Jeff Garcia with Locked On Spurs. Here to give you a quick recap of the Spurs loss to the Dallas Mavericks. The Spurs just came up short after maintaining a 20-point lead. Yeah, Spurs just could not hang on and pick up the W. Although, that first quarter looked like they were able to do it. Inexperience or execution down the stretch led to the 99-104 loss to the Dallas Mavericks. This is going to be a theme throughout the entire season for San Antonio. Lessons learned, how to maintain leads, how to weather storms when teams come back at them. And if this is pretty much on-the-job training for a very young Spurs team that is in a rebuilding season, well, they got a lot of that experience that's going to be vital for them future forward moving. You look at Doncic, he just proved too much for San Antonio down the stretch. They were out-talented. Popovich said it best after the game, saying this team simply needs to play perfect on the fundamental side, and called out the team, saying that they do not have potent offense. So, yeah, put that all together, led to another Spurs loss. 4 games straight for San Antonio. Yeah, 4-game losing streak. DeJounte Murray led the way with 23 points. The Spurs on-the-job training doesn't get any easier. The next face, the Milwaukee Bucks. Subscribe to Locked On Spurs wherever you get your favorite podcast.
We had bonus basketball in the Bay as the Memphis Grizzlies get a big road win. Ja Morant had 30 in this one as they get the victory over Golden State. Our Locked On host has more.
Last night, the Memphis Grizzlies suffered an embarrassing loss to the Portland Trail Blazers. But if you want to know the biggest indication that this young core of the Memphis Grizzlies is on the right direction, look no further than tonight's performance against the Golden State Warriors. A big victory, a 104-101 victory against the Golden State Warriors, ending the perfect season of the Golden State Warriors, despite Steph Curry having a Steph Curry night. Against one of the most disciplined teams in the NBA, the Grizzlies were able to cause 21 overall turnovers from the Golden State Warriors. The Grizzlies created turnovers, and despite the fact that they shot less than 30% from 3, the Grizzlies were able to create extra possessions all night long to get a big victory on the road against the Golden State Warriors. As a result, the Grizzlies end a very tough Western Conference road trip, a West Coast swing against 4 potential playoff opponents, 2-2, and they're now 3-2, going back home against the Miami Heat and 2 games against the Denver Nuggets. But this counts as a victory. If you wanted the Grizzlies to be able to win a game via a defensive performance, it was tonight. DeAnthony Melton, 4 steals, 3 blocks, a fantastic overall performance. 4 steals for Ja Morant as well. The Grizzlies defense has struggled overall to start the season. It showed up tonight and made the difference in a big victory against a team that is emerging as a Western Conference contender. This and much more on the post-game edition of the Locked On Grizzlies podcast. Have a great night.
That's a wrap for us. Thank you for making Locked On Now your first listen every day. For more on the NBA and your team, make sure you listen to Locked On NBA and your team's Locked On podcast. I'm Kainani Stevens, and this has been Locked On Now.